Just after 8:30 last night, an explosion rocked New York City's Chelsea neighborhood, sending people running in panic.
New information tonight about a similar blast that happened during a charity race at the Jersey Shore earlier today. Officials now say that a trash can was packed with enough explosives to cause serious injuries to runners if the race had started on time.
Talk about the Minnesota attack, because ISIS's media arm claiming responsibility, saying that this individual was a soldier of the Islamic State, was an ISIS terrorist. What more do we know about this?
And the language they use, which is a soldier of the Islamic State, is the typical language they use for people who are inspired. In other words, they're not directed. This is the language they use when these are people who may have sent some kind of message right before they carried out their attack. They might have posted something somewhere saying, "I'm doing this in the name of," and then they go out and do their thing. It appears to be that would be the case. Again, there's tons of these people out there who could be inspired to act without anyone knowing anything about it beforehand.
A weekend attacks in both New York City and Seaside Park, New Jersey. Now another threat, this one in Elizabeth, New Jersey. What investigators say happened just hours after a suspicious package was found near the local train station.
What we have learned is that the investigators are now working under the theory that this was a cell, a possible terror cell working in New Jersey, somewhere of around maybe less than a dozen people who may be behind the bombs, the explosions in New York and in New Jersey, and the explosion some of the bombs that were found last night in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Hi there everybody, this is Scott at Standing Ground Studio, and you might have noticed that over the last week or two, current events have hit a whole new level of crazy. It's hard to keep anything straight anymore, and tensions are at an all-time high. At least that's the way it seems to me. And it's all just in time for the elections. So you'll see a couple of photos on the screen right here from the One World Trade Center, and you'll remember last year the rainbow landed at the base of it on September 10th. And then this year a similar event happened on September 8th, and you can see the quote in the lower left-hand side of the screen. I put these photos here to bring up a sense of timing. Timing adds layers of meaning to any event, so keep that in mind when you see the rush of info that came through last week. If you're familiar with this channel, you'll know that I've said time and again that major corruption would be coming out on just about every level at a terrible time. All parties and major institutions need to look like they're hiding something so that everyone has someone to blame when this whole show basically implodes, whenever that is. And it seems to me that we're entering the next phase of that narrative where corruption is being raised in the public consciousness very rapidly. You'll see on the screen here several headlines that I googled real fast, and it really seems like everybody is being investigated all at once. And I tend to show a lot of coverage from mainstream media, not because I think of it as real news per se. I'm showing you what's being projected to the masses and how it affects the overall narrative. To me, our world narrative is scripted. As for this video, I'm a few days late on posting it, but the themes are enduring and they're going to impact us in a huge way very soon, so we should pay attention. 1, we're being divided on every issue. There's speculation in all directions on all topics. The system is slowly revealing corruption on every level, just like I pointed out. Seeds of doubt about our future are being sown into everyone's mind. Both presidential candidates are looking worse by the minute as the stakes get higher and higher, driving everyone crazy. And if you've been subscribed to my channel, you'll know that I've been saying 9/11 will be used against us in the near future, especially once terrorist attacks hit us here at home, real or fake. In fact, that's going to amp up every argument we're having, especially the election. All the rhetoric related to 9/11 from the past week played up on all these issues. That's what we'll go over here. And every one of these themes happens to be projected in an upcoming show called Designated Survivor. You can see right in the middle of the screen here, this explosion is the US Capitol being blown up with most of our government inside of it, or the heads of state anyway. It looks like a clear case of programming to me. And we'll get to it later, but keep in mind the themes we talk about as I lead into that show. So let's get rolling. This one right here speaks to the feeling we're supposed to have going through all of it, which is, of course, fear, anger, and worry. And according to some surveys, we peaked on how often we feel those emotions and how strongly we feel them back in 2006. Then they dropped noticeably in 2011. Then we're back up to a relative new high here in 2016, which is due to the rise of ISIS and several high-profile attacks in Europe and the US. Now again, it's all about timing. September 9th is when this was released. They specifically make mention of the San Bernardino shootings, and I say that because it's going to come up again. So in the second quote here, they bring up mostly the whole theme of my entire video. So the anniversary comes amid a presidential campaign where questions about which candidate would do a better job keeping the U.S. safe have been the central focus. According to results from the same poll released earlier in the week, about 11% of voters name an issue related to terrorism, national security, or military policy as their top concern when choosing a presidential candidate. Again, it's worrying about our future and who will represent us, of course. And I held on to that article because I had a few thoughts about it, which were immediately echoed in this article here a day later. And it touches down on something that goes unsaid in the public, which is that 9/11 is still being used against us and our freedoms and our sensibilities every single day. And the second quote on the screen here points to that. The fact that these issues remain such a core part of American political life as the nation pauses to observe the 15th anniversary of 9/11 reflects the enduring potential of terrorism to dominate the political conversation and explains why it is seen as such a potent tool by America's enemies. Now, the author forgot to mention who was really behind it all, but he was kind enough to include photos of Bush on the day of, including here at the school classroom. Now, why is it that we're feeling this way, that we feel all this anxiety? It's because they've been building up reports about how it's inevitable we are going to get hit again. I've been reporting on this all year. So this article here, again, September 9th, is building on a larger narrative they've been writing about throughout the week, letting us know just how vulnerable both Europe and the US are and how strikes are inevitable. Nobody's safe. Here's a quick summary of what they want you to know.
I think this really goes to illustrate, Carol, is the problem and the challenges that European security services are facing when they're confronting not just major ISIS networks, but also ISIS-inspired attacks. And we had a big investigative story, as you know, earlier this week, which looked at that Paris ISIS network, the network that facilitated the Paris attacks. And we're hearing from officials now that 30 to 40 people who were directly involved in facilitating those attacks are still at large. Simply put, Carol, European security services are stretched too thin, and with ISIS losing so much ground in Syria and Iraq and Libya, they're concerned there are going to be a lot more of these so-called ISIS-inspired attacks, which then has a knock-on effect, preventing them from being able to do their job and drill down on ISIS's established networks here in Europe, Carol.
So again, security forces are going to be too strained, and attacks can pop up anywhere at any time. They also mentioned that if agencies could just share data faster across borders, they might catch terrorists earlier, and they talk about this a lot in these articles because it's alluding to agendas like the UN Strong Cities campaign, where they want a UN presence in every country out there. And again, it's more, they bring up more lone wolf attacks where we can't guess where they'll come from. And one of the key ones they bring up is the San Bernardino attacks. And again, on the exact same day, September 9th, a 141-page report about these San Bernardino attacks came out, detailing just how real the whole occasion was and how authorities responded. It was released by the Community-Oriented Police Services of the U.S. Department of Justice, COPS, and the Police Foundation. I personally remember this reeking of false flag, but 141 pages is a lot of text. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I just find it interesting that this report, these articles, and countless other stories came out on Friday, September 9th, right before 9/11. Also on the same day, the Senate passed the Saudi 9/11 bill, and that's where the victims and the families of 9/11 can finally sue the Saudi government. The timing of this is the most intriguing part to me. Beyond that, it's the same narrative that's been reported since the spring. Congress wants to send it through, Obama wants to veto it, and he's confirmed that he will, because it opens us up to potentially serious legal complications across the world. One interesting quote here from Terry Strada, the National Chair for 9/11 Families United: "If we're not funding terrorist organizations and killing people, then we don't have anything to worry about." I agree. It's almost like something's going to be exposed soon. Anyway, there's one big point I missed earlier, and it comes from the Free Thought Project. There was a section tacked onto this bill that kind of nullifies the meaning of it, which is that as long as, you can see it highlighted down here, as long as we're engaged in a good faith discussion with the foreign state defendant, proceedings can be delayed or stayed for up to 180 days. And at the end of that, they can continue to add additional 180-day stays as many times as they want. So this can be delayed indefinitely if it needs to be. And you can see the author's feelings on this. It's just a cruel hoax. And I largely agree. He's saying basically nothing's going to come from this. And I don't really agree with that. I think something's going to come from this. It's just by the time we kick down the door to all this, it's going to be a horror show that comes back at us. And again, yeah, it's a cruel hoax, one way or another. We'll see. Jill Stein had to speak up on the same day, kind of pushing people along to want to get some sort of truth. I have a few thoughts on her. I haven't really looked into her. In any case, it's getting us wanting to talk about 9/11 terrorism again because it's time to do that. That being said, it's all about division and outrage, right? So, you probably saw this one already. If you haven't seen this Twin Towers mattress ad, here's a snippet.
In Texas, poor taste doesn't begin to describe this ad from a local mattress retailer.
What better way to remember 9/11 than with a Twin Tower sale? Right now, you can get any size mattress for a twin price. Store-wide sale all day long. Oh my God! We'll never forget.
This is so bad, it's painful to pretty much anybody, and it really does catch your attention. It caught mine. But there's another point that makes it even more suspicious. The company responsible for this ad basically closed down overnight. The pretext is that it was so shameful that they just had to shut down, and my very first thought was this was done on purpose. So the guy who originally snagged the video before it could be taken down is the same guy to announce their letter where they'll close down their store. And if you look at the pinned tweet at the top of his feed, no, I'm not affiliated with Miracle Mattress or worked for them. Thanks, everyone. This is a little bit suspicious. So I looked into these people, him and them. You can see they have a Facebook photo from October of last year. You can see the woman from the video. They registered the business back in December of 2012, and I didn't really come up with anything very conclusive, other than this guy is in the same market as them. That's about it. So I don't know if this was a legitimate bad call or if it was done on purpose, but it definitely serves to infuriate people just in time for the weekend. Now, as a truther, try to talk to those same people about how the official story doesn't add up in any way, and they're not going to listen to you. This is one of those tactics to keep people so angry they don't want to hear any of your conspiracy talk. It's really just kind of inhuman, actually. So, whether or not this was intentional, I want to point out how mainstream media projected it.
Anyway, in a statement, the owner of Miracle Mattress says the ad was tasteless and crude, and the employees behind it will be held responsible. Here's the concern with this. Obviously, it's wrong. That never forget thing matters. It just doesn't matter to the families that were lost and the people who were there. But so much of what we're dealing with now in terms of our fears about the world stem from the reality of what can happen. And when you get casual about that, you're not just being insensitive. On a level, you're being inhuman.
I mean, when you remember back 15 years ago, the idea, if you could have thought that there would ever be a funny commercial poking fun at 9/11, it would be inconceivable. It's still actually pretty inconceivable. I wonder what will happen to
Sometimes
those employees.
time heals too much.
Yeah.
Right. So, of course, it plays right into the fear we're supposed to be feeling right about now. And when you take a tragedy like that and make light of it, or maybe call it into question, it's not only insensitive, it's inhuman. Because, like I've said before, that perfectly ironic logline, never forget, relates to the pain and the trauma that's locked inside of people. That pain, of course, is being used against us all over again. Some wounds are never healed because trauma doesn't go away if you don't deal with it. Or maybe if you're a monster, you heal too much. At least that's what I think I'm getting from what he just said. Anyway, I think we can all truly agree that this ad was in the worst taste ever. It just doesn't deserve being published. So I think I agree with mainstream media on at least one point here. So whether it's in our advertising or entertainment, we shouldn't be making light of 9/11. It's just terrible. Let's forget about this and just go ahead and see what else is on. Oh, this is cool. Oh, hey, it's Jack Bauer. Uh-oh, something happened. Okay, Secret Service is coming in. Starting to get hectic. Oh no. That's not good. Alright, so the Eagle has been taken out. So I guess this guy's going to be president. Alright, what next?
This is the most devastating attack on our country since 9/11.
Wait, what did they just say?
This is the most devastating attack on our country since 9/11.
Yeah, they just did. In case you couldn't hear it, that woman saying This is the most devastating attack on our country since 9/11. And it just happens to be overlap with that image right there. And I couldn't help but notice it looks just like Ground Zero from 9/11. How interesting is that? When does the show come out again? Oh, look at that. September 21st. That's amazing. It's brilliant, actually, because then all of this that we've been talking about will be top of mind right then. All right, well, what themes come up when you watch their advertising? So I checked it out ahead of time, and here's what I noticed. Terror is coming home in a major way. Our government is going to experience some form of major interruption. There will be serious concerns and doubt about the next president's ability to handle a major crisis and an all-out war, possibly. This president has never been elected to any position. That makes me think of Trump. And that's not really a prediction that he'll take the White House. It's just to tie into our reality. We won't be sure who attacked us, and we're hugely vulnerable in ways that could destabilize the whole country. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited to drink this all in as entertainment. No, but seriously, there are people who will think that this last video we saw with the mattresses is awful, yet they want to be entertained by shows like this right around 9/11. They won't even see a connection. It is absolutely charged with every kind of political drama going on right now, and people will think it's just entertainment. So whenever a show or movie really catches my attention, I head to their Facebook page for their advertisements. The shorter the message, the punchier it has to be. So of course, all these captions have to do with the show. But notice how easily it applies to our current situation and probably our very near future. So over on the left, we have history will be made, and it's not always up to us how history plays itself out, which on the surface kind of looks like we don't know the events that are coming up, but also to me kind of alludes it's a scripted event. In the middle, lower part here, we have the power struggle begins on September 21st. But this catches my attention. We can't just let the White House take an eraser to our entire domestic agenda. I think this alludes to the discussions we'll be having over safety versus freedom in the face of danger, plus the many conversations that will result from it, like who do we trust in our own country? It's time to choose a side. We've seen that one time and again. It alludes to that civil war, the fracturing of the union that's coming. And my favorite one up top, this is a real thing. If you can't at least see that this is somehow suggestive, then I really don't know what to tell you. This is kind of how they put truth in plain sight and do programming ahead of time. But we got another one, and a lot of people are going to love this one. So they put this on a building back in the summer. Our next president will not be elected. And we've all heard the theory that Obama's going to cancel the election and take a third term countless times, and anything's possible, so I'm not saying it won't happen. But the message plastered on the wall here is kind of open-ended. I think in a larger sense, it's always been true. Our president isn't really elected, it's selected. So people will read into this what they will. I've seen this one here, the whole world is watching us right now. That one has popped up from time to time, and that kind of alludes to when a major event's coming, the whole world's watching that. And at the same time, it's coming through the fourth wall happens to be a part of it too. So here's some images you'll see that come up in some of their promos. And this may mean something, it may mean nothing, but I've seen one movie in the theaters this year which showed us kind of the same thing right here. And it's from Batman vs. Superman, which was riddled with so much esoteric imagery that they almost forgot to make a movie. Really, it was a hot mess. So you can go ahead and shut your eyes for the next slide or two, but I'm not really ruining anything at all. They kind of did the same thing with the U.S. Capitol being blown up in a major terrorist event. And it was a different context, obviously. But when I saw this back in April, it really caught my attention. So when I saw this a few days ago, or last week, it immediately popped up in my mind again. It just looks like they're saying our government is going to be interrupted soon, or major terror event is coming home. And here's another set of visuals that were similar, and I picked these up while grabbing some snapshots. And this is kind of what I mean by the whole world is watching. These events are televised within that world. All eyes will be on these events. So I'm not saying that this right here is going to happen exactly, that we're going to just blow up the U.S. Capitol building, but we should keep an eye on the messaging that we're sent ahead of time. Because if a population consumes programming like this for a long time, which is projecting major gloom and doom at them, they will become more responsive to a real event. And the truther community, honestly, is especially vulnerable to this because we love to declare anything at any time. So we need to be careful about jumping ahead of ourselves in the near future. That said, if a terrorist attack does happen, it doesn't have to be anywhere near the size of these explosions. It doesn't even have to be real. The media can take the event and pump a bunch of fear and doubt into any narrative they want. And again, it's all about controversy. That's how any major agenda gets pushed through. If we're busy arguing with each other, the lines start to become blurred. So more important than any single event or the beginning of martial law, it's about all of us becoming twisted up so badly that there's no consensus on anything. No one will trust the system, and we all end up creating our own theories. So I would like to bring up a thought of my own. It's my own speculation, but it shows just how little it would take to make life worse for all of us. So look at the left side of the screen there. Did you notice how many reports there have been about the security of our election? Cyber hacking, voter fraud, rigged elections. I think this is going to come up again. And while anything can happen for sure, it would only take one swing state's voting turnout to be compromised or be too close to call to really amp up this country's anger and apprehension. So as the election results get hung up in that situation, speculation and accusations could go wild, especially since we wouldn't be told who actually committed the fraud if there was any. It would be a bunch of people pointing fingers at each other. And this is part 2 of this thought because this always catches my attention. It would also be the perfect framing device to start bringing up the 2000 election, who got into office as a result, and how he handled 9/11, the 2 wars which came afterward, and that would bring us right to the present. Now, at any point in that timeline, throw in a terrorist event of any sort, and you see how easily we get ensnared in our own past. The media loves using history as a framing device, and I also think this is why they've kept Bush Jr. on the edge of the public's memory. We're not done with him or Blair. So, will it happen just like this? Probably not. But I do expect them to ring this bell at some point. I do expect something to happen with the elections, and somehow we're going to bring Bush and 9/11 back up. Because exposing our leaders as having ties to the terrorists we're fighting would definitely help bring the house down. Again, anything's possible, but I see the country getting mired in doubt and controversy for just a little while longer. The longer this drags on, the more people will dig in against one another. And that's about it for my presentation right there. Hopefully you got some value out of it. Thank you for sticking with me all the way to the end. Please share this video or subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you next time.